June 30th, 1999. Around 20 miles outside of St. Louis, Missouri, a woman is driving by a cornfield near Highway 367. But as she looks out of her window, something unusual catches her attention in the field. Stopping to investigate, she gets out of her car and slowly approaches it, only to recoil in horror as she sees that the unusual shape is a partially decomposed man's body. As authorities arrive at the scene, they find that the decomposition is so severe that the flesh on the man's outstretched hands has already decayed, causing his fingertips to detach near the top knuckles and fall into the weeds beside him. Managing to pull fingerprints, they soon identify him as 41-year-old Ricky McCormick. Despite having only disappeared 3 days earlier, Ricky's body was barely recognizable. The rural location in St. Charles County immediately raised suspicions of foul play, given the area had a long history of being used to dump bodies by criminal organizations. The advanced state of decomposition made it challenging for the pathologists at the St. Charles County Medical Examiner's Office to determine the cause of death, and the best conclusion they could reach was undetermined. Detectives interviewed Ricky's family, friends, girlfriend, and acquaintances, but failed to uncover any significant leads in the case. Described as impoverished and grappling with mental health issues, it didn't take long for Ricky's case to fade into obscurity and seemingly turn cold. But then, something happened that would propel this unsolved mystery into the public spotlight. In March of 2011, nearly 12 years after his body was found, FBI officials from the Cryptanalysis and Racketeering Records Unit in Quantico revealed that 2 handwritten pages of encrypted notes had been discovered in the jeans pockets of Ricky. Unable to crack the code themselves, the FBI released them to the public in the hopes that someone would be able to solve their meaning and, hopefully, uncover some answers to this puzzling case. The perplexing nature of Ricky's encrypted notes, allegedly composed by a man with minimal literacy skills, has baffled even the most skilled cryptographers worldwide ever since. Today, these notes rank as the 3rd most challenging unsolved case for the Cryptanalysis and Racketeering Records Unit, trailing behind only the Zodiac Killer's unbroken cipher from 1969 and a mysterious threat letter penned to an undisclosed public agency. The intrigue surrounding the case is deeper than just the codes, however, with Ricky seemingly holding links to drug trafficking and dangerous individuals in the St. Louis area. So in today's video, let's take a look at the case of Ricky McCormick and try to decipher the mystery of his strange codes and his potential murder. Born on June 14, 1958, Ricky McCormick exhibited signs of mental health challenges from a young age. At school, he was said to isolate himself and exhibit peculiar behaviors, with his mother, Frankie Sparks, believing that he was mentally disabled. Some of his relatives have even indicated that he showed signs of suffering from a disorder such as schizophrenia or bipolar, though it seems unclear whether he ever actually received treatment for any mental illness issues. Despite struggling academically as a result of this, and being seen as slow and unintelligent by everyone in his life, Ricky was known to possess a vivid imagination and to share eccentric tales and stories. Struggling to read or write, unable to spell words and write anything more than scribbles, Ricky was shuffled through various classes and grades before he ultimately dropped out of his high school in St. Louis. Lacking a formal education, Ricky was forced to take on various low-paying jobs such as mopping floors and washing dishes, often working night shifts to make ends meet along with the disability payments he received for a chronic heart problem. His aunt Gloria even referred to him as a vampire due to his habit of sleeping all day and working all night. But in 1992, his life took a dark turn when he encountered legal troubles, facing charges of statutory rape after fathering 2 children with a 14-year-old known to his family only as Pretty Baby. 34 at the time of the charges, court documents indicate that Ricky had been in a relationship with the girl since she had been 11 years old, with her identity being protected by the court. Ricky's defense team argued that his mental issues made him incompetent to stand trial or understand his actions. But after having a psychologist assess him, the court denied these claims. In the end, Ricky pled guilty to the charges on September 1, 1993, and found himself imprisoned at the Farmington Correctional Center for 13 months. While the situation surrounding Pretty Baby and Ricky's imprisonment are troubling to say the least, this was only the beginning of Ricky's problems. Upon leaving prison, Ricky took a graveyard shift job at an Amoco gas station located in downtown St. Louis, and it was there that he encountered several dangerous characters who would alter the course of his life forever. The Amoco gas station was owned by 2 Palestinian brothers, Juma and Baha Hamdallah, both of whom were known for their violent tendencies and criminal associations. Baha in particular had significant ties to gang members in St. Louis City, and was suspected of being involved in drug dealing and trafficking. He was reported to possess a number of weapons, including handguns and knives, and was said to be violent and unstable, being involved in violent incidents on numerous occasions. For example, in 1997, Baha allegedly fired a revolver at Terrence Clark in a drive-by shooting, which fortunately left Terrence unharmed. Despite being arrested at the time, Baha was never prosecuted for the shooting and was quickly released. In 1998, Baha was allegedly involved in another shooting, this time firing his weapon at one of his older brothers, Bajat, after an altercation with him at the family market, a corner grocery store in St. Louis. Despite multiple witnesses seeing Baha shoot his brother refused to cooperate with police, and instead told them that a Hispanic man with a goatee had shot him that day. Despite this, Baha voluntarily surrendered to the police 6 days later after a warrant was put out on him in connection to the shooting. But once again, he escaped the hands of the law as his brother refused to press charges, resulting in his release. Later that same month, while working at the Amoco station he owned, Baha was arrested again, this time for an assault on a homeless drug addict called Elro Carr. Allegedly, Baha threatened to kill Elro before assaulting him with a hammer. But shockingly, 2 weeks before Elro's scheduled court appearance against Baha in August of 1998, he was fatally shot on a street near the Amoco station. Consequently, the charges were dropped against Baha, resulting in him evading justice yet again. Although nobody was ever arrested for the murder of Elro, St. Louis police's confidential informants had told them that Baha had ordered the hit on him to avoid him testifying against him. As it should be clear, Ricky's new bosses were dangerous people, deeply entwined with the criminal underworld. Soon after he began working for them, Ricky started to take long trips to Florida for unknown reasons, though his girlfriend, Sandra Jones, would later inform the police that they were to smuggle marijuana for the Hamdallah brothers. Approximately 2 weeks before his death, Ricky purchased a one-way ticket to Orlando, marking one of at least 2 trips he made to Florida that year. Though we can't say for sure what Ricky was doing in Orlando, based on Sandra's claims it seems likely that he was collecting marijuana, something she said he would do for the brothers in exchange for money. Sandra claimed Ricky had brought the drugs to their apartment on numerous occasions, which he said he was storing for Baha. However, beyond that, Ricky refused to talk about his trips with her. Assuming all of this is true, it seems more than likely that his involvement in this criminal enterprise was, in one way or another, responsible for his approaching death. Upon returning from this final trip, Ricky's behavior was confusing and erratic, and Sandra felt he seemed scared, speculating that perhaps something had gone wrong on this final trip. On June 22nd, Ricky entered the emergency department at Barnes Jewish Hospital, complaining of chest pains and difficult breathing. Given he had a history of chest problems since childhood linked to his chronic heart problem and asthma, this in itself doesn't seem too unusual. He was also a heavy smoker, claiming to smoke at least a pack of cigarettes every day and to drink more than 20 caffeinated drinks each day. Unsure of the cause of his issues, doctors kept him in the hospital for 2 days to observe him, but finding nothing wrong with him, they discharged him on June 24th. He then took a bus to see his aunt Gloria, telling her very little, which was unusual for him as he frequently discussed issues and problems with her. 2 days later, he again tried to get admitted into hospital, this time going to the Forest Park's hospital emergency room, though they ultimately turned him away. Despite this, he spent the night in the waiting room. His Aunt Gloria would later comment that she believed Ricky was trying to seek safety and refuge in the hospitals, perhaps to escape some sort of trouble he was in. The final confirmed sighting of Ricky was at the Amoco gas station by a fellow employee on June 27th, the day after he had left the second hospital. And after that, he vanished. It wasn't until June 30th, 3 days later, that his badly decomposed body was discovered in the field 20 miles away from his home and workplace. The St. Louis Major Case Squad confirmed early on that the case was being treated as a potential homicide, although they would not rule out that natural causes could be responsible for his death. Despite being missing for only 3 days, Ricky's body was significantly decomposed, likely exacerbated by the warm June weather of 1999. Police speculated that the advanced state of decay indicated that the killer might have deliberately exposed Ricky's body to high temperatures to accelerate decomposition and obscure the cause of death. And if this was their intention, then it succeeded, as the St. Charles County Medical Examiner's Office could only classify Ricky's cause of death as undetermined following a challenging autopsy. They did, however, deduce that Ricky had died within hours of leaving the gas station that day. In addition to Ricky's body, investigators discovered 2 sheets of paper in his pockets covered in scribbled paragraphs. Some paragraphs were encircled, resembling speech bubbles, while others were structured like formal letters with what looks potentially like addresses, complete with zip codes. The contents baffled investigators, who didn't know what to make of them. That is, until Sandra contacted the police and told them about Baja and the trips Ricky had been taking to Florida, suspecting that his shady employers were likely involved in his death, perhaps related to something that happened on his last trip. With this potential motive in mind, police began looking into the Hamdallah brothers and their associates, and the seemingly nonsensical notes on the pieces of paper were pushed aside. By December, the St. Louis Homicide Division began assisting the local St. Charles County Sheriff's Department, believing they had potential information linking to Ricky's death. The St. Louis Homicide Department had already been investigating a prominent drug dealer called Gregory Lamar Knox, who happened to operate near Ricky's housing complex. A suspect in multiple homicides, including murder-for-hire hits, detectives had received information that Knox had been involved in a murder that sounded eerily similar to Ricky's death, and had uncovered clear connections between him and the Hamdallah brothers. This led to a lengthy surveillance operation, gathering information on the Hamdallahs and the various employees and visitors to their gas station. However, they failed to uncover anything linking the brothers, or Knox, to Ricky's death. Interestingly, in August 1999, shortly after Ricky's death, police investigated an incident where Juma reportedly shot his brother Baha during a dispute. Baha survived, opting not to press charges. Whether this incident had anything to do with Ricky's murder is unknown. Both of the key suspects, Knox and Baha, would go on to serve time for unrelated cases to Ricky's death. In 2000, Knox was arrested and ultimately pled guilty to charges for crack cocaine distribution, possessing a firearm, and drug trafficking. Despite being unable to definitively prove it, Knox is a suspect in multiple murders occurring between 1998 and 1999 within St. Louis. Similarly, Baha was arrested after another incident at a food market in October 2000 resulted in him fatally shooting a customer, Robert Steptoe. Although differing accounts were presented in court, Baha was convicted of first-degree murder for shooting Steptoe and was sentenced to 38 years in prison. But as we've seen previously, keeping Baha in prison seems to be an almost impossible task. In 2006, an appeals court ordered a retrial for his case, citing errors made by Baha's lawyer regarding testimony from a gunshot residue expert. During the retrial, the jury was convinced that Baha had acted in self-defense, with the firearm discharging accidentally. As a result, he was acquitted and released from prison in May of 2008. Supposedly, Baha is now married and living in Cleveland, while his brother Juma has relocated to the Philippines. Neither of the brothers or Knox has ever been arrested in regards to Ricky's death. With the notes found in Ricky's pockets having been kept confidential even from his own family in 2001, with no other leads, detectives took another look at them, this time enlisting the help of the FBI to try and determine what they might mean, and if they could hold a clue to what happened to him. The two notes contained over 30 lines of coded material, including a mix of letters, numbers, dashes, and parentheses. In most circumstances, FBI analysts are able to crack ciphers and codes within a matter of hours. However, in this case, when the codes landed on the desk of Dan Olson, a forensic analyst at the cryptanalysis unit in Quantico, he was stumped. Olson, known for being disciplined and methodical, would ultimately become head of the department. When Ricky's codes first came to him, he studied them intensely, searching for patterns, counting characters, breaking it down with graphs, and even enlisting state-of-the-art software and computers to analyze the writing. But despite this, he was unable to decipher the codes. Even after recruiting the entire team at the cryptanalysis unit, cross-referencing the letters and numbers in the notes with every St. Louis street address in existence, and even expanding nationwide, led to no significant correlations. Olson was convinced that the characters in Ricky's notes showed patterns and were not random, implying it should be theoretically solvable. Typically, cracking a cipher involves 4 key steps. First, the language must be identified, which in this case was presumed to be English. Next, the system used, such as a substitution cipher where letters are replaced with others or represent something specific, must be determined. Then, with this information, a key is created. And finally, this key is used to unveil the intended message in the text. But in this case, Olson and his team were unable to ever work out what the system Ricky had used for his cipher was, stumping them at stage 2. While some people have claimed the notes are the meaningless scribbles of a man widely regarded as illiterate and with an extremely low IQ, Olson vehemently opposes this viewpoint, firmly believing that the notes are not gibberish, and that there is a crackable code in the writing that may reveal crucial clues about Ricky's death and the people he encountered prior to it. Despite utilizing updated technology over the years to try and crack Ricky's ciphers, the FBI unit was unable to make any progress with it, placing it in the less than 1% of codes that they failed to solve. As a result, in 2009, Olson's team sought outside help, presenting the cryptic puzzle to around 25 amateur cryptographers at the American Cryptogram Association's annual convention. But once again, nobody was able to make any breakthroughs with the coded messages. As a last-ditch attempt to crack the codes, Olson chose to seek help from the public, releasing photos of 2 coded notes to everyone in the hope that somebody, somewhere, might finally be able to solve the mystery. The FBI also sought information from anyone who might know of other coded notes written by Ricky, believing these could provide valuable context or allow for comparisons. Olson emphasized that even if the notes turned out to be something mundane like a grocery list or love letter, understanding the code would be crucial since it was a cipher system they had not encountered before. The coded messages gained attention worldwide when the FBI released them, prompting the creation of a dedicated page to the codes on their website, which I've linked in the description down below. Despite numerous leads and countless individuals believing they had solved the codes, claiming they were everything from drug transactions and addresses to medication schedules to notes about mortgage deals, no breakthroughs were made. In St. Louis, Ricky's family members expressed surprise that they had never been updated by law enforcement regarding the Hamdallahs, knocks, or the progress of the investigation into Ricky's death. Their knowledge of the encrypted notes found in his possession only came years later through a local news report. They found out about the notes the same time as the rest of the world. Contradicting some of the FBI's assertions that Ricky regularly tinkered with codes, family members came out in 2012 and insisted Ricky never wrote codes as a child, claiming they had instead told investigators that he occasionally jotted down nonsensical scribbles that he referred to as writing. They firmly denied that the notes found in his pockets were written by him, adding further confusion to the already puzzling case. Despite this, Olson has made it clear he is completely certain that Ricky wrote the notes himself. How he knows this, however, has not been revealed to the public. There does not appear to be any definitive confirmation that the handwriting matches Ricky's, or anything else to prove without a doubt that he wrote the notes. In contrast, cryptologist Alanka Dunnan, known for her work consulting with Dan Brown on works like the Da Vinci Code, reached the conclusion that Ricky most likely did not write the notes after years of scrutinizing them, instead speculating they may have been given to him as instructions for some sort of courier work. Whether Ricky fell prey to foul play or not, the mystery of the coded notes haunts this perplexing case. More than 2 decades later, the question of whether Ricky truly wrote the notes or not remains unanswered. If it wasn't Ricky, could they have been penned by his killer? Or is there another explanation? The FBI have highlighted on several occasions that the characters in the codes were deliberate, not random, featuring repetitive sequences like numerous letter E's, references to numbers such as 71, 74, and 75, and a focus on the letters NCBE. The prevailing belief among the FBI and police investigators is that Ricky did write the notes. But accepting Ricky as the author implies that a semi-literate man, who struggled to spell his own name, managed to confound the FBI for decades with 30 lines of coded text. The FBI, while not completely ruling it out, do not believe the notes were written by Ricky's potential killer. Despite this, one idea that has been floated online is that the notes could be the work of a serial killer akin to the Zodiac Killer, who famously sent cryptic messages to newspapers during the late 1960s. Although some of the Zodiac's messages remain unsolved, a husband and wife amateur team did crack one in 1969. Another theory, given Ricky's illiteracy and his involvement in drug trafficking, is that Ricky was simply ferrying the coded notes between drug dealers or criminals without understanding its content. The odds of a relatively small drug trafficking organization creating such a seemingly complicated cipher, however, feels unlikely to me. Others speculate that the notes might have been Ricky's personal form of shorthand, a mix of abbreviations, acronyms, and homonyms, rather than an encrypted message. They suggest Ricky could have written these notes to himself, as reminders completely unrelated to the case. There has even been speculation they relate to his recent hospital visits and are jumbled notes about medication he was given. Another perspective posits the notes were a form of shorthand, used by an uneducated individual involved in drug dealing, potentially documenting transactions and identifying associates. Or, despite the assertions of the FBI, could the notes ultimately just be the nonsensical scribbles of someone with poor literacy skills and mental illness challenges that make sense to nobody but himself? Regardless of their origin, Ricky's encrypted notes remain one of the cryptanalysis and racketeering records unit's most perplexing unsolved cases. The FBI still maintains a dedicated website for the case, encouraging amateur codebreakers to attempt to decode it, continuing to believe that deciphering these messages holds the key to unraveling the mystery of who killed Ricky McCormick. Perhaps one day we will finally get an answer to these mysteries. Who knows, maybe you'll be the one to work out the answer to these cryptic notes. And with that, our exploration of this strange case comes to a close. So what do you think really happened to Ricky McCormick? Do you think his death was a homicide or something else entirely? Do you think the informant tips tying his bosses and local drug dealers to his death are the most likely solution to what happened? And if so, how do they link to the codes that were discovered? People with far more understanding of ciphers and codes than myself clearly believe they are genuine coded notes. So do they hold answers to this bizarre case? Or are they completely unrelated? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. As always, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and check out some of the other true crime content up on my channel. You have been watching The Mystery Abyss.